My name is Thomas Reed, and I'm 79 years old. I'm telling you this now because most of the people who would have needed to hear it are already gone, and because I can feel how little time I have left to keep pretending I don't know what it means. I live alone in a small house that still smells like my wife's soap, even though she's been gone 6 years. I don't think the smell is really there anymore. I think it's just something my mind keeps for me, the way it keeps old voices and old mistakes, bringing them back when the days get too quiet. Silence is different when you're young. It feels temporary then, like something you can fill later. When you're old, silence settles into the walls. It learns your routines. It waits for you. For most of my life, I chose what was safe. I didn't think of it that way. I told myself I was being responsible, careful, mature. I thought truth was something you visited once in a while, like a hobby, not something you lived inside. Something you could postpone without consequence. At my age, days don't stretch. They stack, one on top of the other. Morning coffee, afternoon nap, evening news, bed. The rhythm is steady, and that steadiness gives you room to think. Sometimes too much room. You start replaying moments you didn't know were important at the time. Ordinary afternoons. Small decisions. The kind you make without ceremony, without realizing they're turning points. That's where this understanding came from. Not all at once. It arrived the same way everything else in my life did. Slowly. Quietly. Without ceremony. I grew up in a family that prized stability. My father worked at the same manufacturing plant for 42 years. He never loved it, but he never complained either. That was considered a virtue. He came home tired, ate dinner, watched television, went to bed. Repeat. He taught me that endurance was the same thing as character. My mother kept the house running like a machine. Meals on time. Shirts ironed. Floors clean. Feelings tucked away where they wouldn't interfere. She was kind, but careful. Affection was shown through reliability, not words. I learned early that being dependable mattered more than being honest about what you wanted. If you showed up, if you paid your bills, if you didn't make waves, that was enough. Wanting more was indulgent. Wanting something different was risky. When I was 23, I wanted to write. Not books, not anything grand. I wanted to tell stories. I filled notebooks with scenes and bits of dialogue. I wrote about people I knew and people I didn't. I wrote about conversations I wished I'd had and choices I wished I'd made. I stayed up late doing it, the way you do when something feels alive in your hands. There was a clarity in those hours that I've never felt since. A sense that time was generous. That mistakes were reversible. I never told anyone how much it mattered to me. I didn't have the language for that kind of vulnerability. and I didn't want to be laughed at. I didn't want to be seen trying and failing at something that felt fragile. So when my uncle offered to help me get a job at the insurance firm where he worked, I said yes. It was a good job. Clean. Predictable. It came with benefits and a path. Everyone said I was lucky. I told myself I could write on the side. I told myself it didn't have to be either or. I told myself a lot of things that made it easier to put the notebooks in a drawer and close it carefully, like you close the door on a room you promise yourself you'll come back to. I met my wife, Elaine, a few years later. She was practical in a gentle way. She liked knowing where things stood. She believed that planning was a form of love. She didn't push me, but she believed in structure. When I talked about the job, she smiled with relief. When I talked about writing, she smiled too, but it was different. Quieter. Like she didn't want to encourage something that might make life harder. I don't blame her. I made it clear what mattered. Or at least what I was willing to stand behind. Silence teaches people what to expect from you. We got married. We bought a modest house. We had 2 children. Life filled up with ordinary responsibilities. Mornings were rushed. Evenings were tired. Weekends disappeared into errands and lawn care and visits with relatives. I told myself this was adulthood. That this narrowing was natural. Every now and then, I'd feel it. That small ache. I'd be driving home from work and imagine a different version of myself, one who'd taken a risk. One who'd disappointed people in order to be honest. The feeling never stayed long. I was good at pushing it down. Practice helps. At the office, I was reliable. I didn't cause problems. I didn't ask for much. That gets rewarded in small ways. Promotions that come with more work and less daylight. Praise that feels nice but empty. Years passed like that. Not bad years. Just full ones. The kind that don't leave space to question themselves. The kind that convince you that surviving is the same thing as living. I missed things without noticing I was missing them. My daughter's school play because of a meeting that could have been an email. My son's first heartbreak because I was tired and thought we'd talk later. Elaine trying to tell me she felt lonely while I stared at the television, nodding but not really hearing her. None of it felt like a crisis. That's the part people don't talk about. The damage wasn't dramatic. It didn't announce itself. It just accumulated, quietly, like dust. I kept telling myself there would be time. Time to write. Time to listen better. Time to be braver once things were more secure. Things are always more secure right before you realize they aren't. When I was 58, Elaine got sick. Not suddenly. Not in a way that sends people running. It started with fatigue. Then tests. then more tests, then words that rearranged our lives. I took time off work. I sat in waiting rooms. I learned how to cook meals she could keep down. I learned how to measure days by medication schedules. I learned how fragile plans are. In those months, something strange happened. The urgency of survival stripped away a lot of the noise. There were moments when I wanted to tell her things I'd never said. About the notebooks. About the feeling of having lived slightly to the side of myself. About how much I wished I'd been braver, not just for me, but for us. I never did. It didn't seem fair to burden her with my regrets when she was fighting for her life. That's what I told myself. Maybe it was also fear. Once spoken, those truths couldn't be folded back up. They would have changed the shape of everything, and I didn't know how to live with that. Elaine died on a Tuesday morning. The room was quiet. Too quiet. I held her hand and felt it cool, and I remember thinking, very clearly, that this was it. No revisions. No later conversations. No opportunity to say, I was afraid, but I loved you. After the funeral, people brought casseroles and kind words. Then they went back to their lives. I went back to the house. I found the drawer with the notebooks. I sat on the bed and opened one. The handwriting was younger. Messier. Hopeful in a way that hurt to look at. I read a few pages and then closed it. Not because it was bad. Because it was honest. And I didn't know what to do with that anymore. My children were grown by then. They had their own lives, their own compromises. We talked on holidays. We kept things light. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to sound like an old man complaining about choices no one else had made. Years went by. Friends died. My body slowed. The world kept changing without me. Technology passed me by. Conversations moved faster. I felt myself becoming background. It wasn't one moment that brought the understanding. It was a collection of small, unremarkable ones. Sitting alone at dinner. Realizing no one knew what I'd wanted to be. Hearing someone describe me as solid and feeling a strange sadness at how accurate that was. I finally understood that choosing what was safe had cost me more than it protected me. It kept me comfortable, but it also kept me quiet. It kept my life intact, but smaller than it could have been. What can't be fixed is the time. I can't go back and sit with Elaine and tell her who I was afraid to be. I can't show my children a version of their father who took a stand for something that scared him. I can't give my younger self permission after the fact. There's a particular kind of grief that comes from realizing you weren't wrong, just late. It doesn't rage. It settles. It becomes part of you. If you're listening to this, I don't know where you are in your life. I don't know what you're choosing right now. I only know what I wish I'd understood sooner. Safety feels like peace, but it's often just quiet. Truth makes noise. It complicates things. It asks more of you. I was so busy keeping everything steady that I never noticed how much of myself I was setting aside. I don't think everyone needs to chase some big dream. That's not what this is. I think people need to listen when something inside them keeps knocking, even softly. Especially softly. If this meant something to you, you don't need to do anything about it. Just sit with it. That's enough. As for me, I have mornings left. Not many, but some. I make my coffee. I sit by the window. Sometimes I write a few lines. Not for anyone else. Just to feel the truth in my hands one last time. That will have to be enough.